3 y empezamos.
Hello, buenos días, good morning. Today is the 20th of November of 2020, and the time is right now 1 o'clock. Today, as we have been advertising, we are going to speak about, I think, a very important webinar. The topic that we are going to speak about is really, really important when someone is buying a property and applying for a mortgage in Spain. So if you are someone who are thinking of buying a property in Spain and applying for a mortgage in Spain in order to acquire that property, I believe that this webinar with these two special guests that we are going to introduce is going to be really, really good for you in order to help you on what needs to be said, what needs to be applied into when applying for a mortgage. Okay, well, having said that, I'm going to introduce two special guests that we have today in order to speak about the Spanish mortgage market and, as I said, what recommendation is going to be given to you in case that you want to apply for a mortgage in Spain. And also we will speak about the legal aspects. What are the terms, conditions, in what cases should be agreed, and which are the phases in order to, from the beginning when you contract with the bank until the end, whenever you sign the public deed into a notary office. Okay, well, first of all, let me introduce Bozena Brunowska. She's a mortgage broker. She's well experienced on mortgages in Spain. She knows all the, I would say, banks in Spain, and she works in Mortgage Direct, which is a specialized company, and she will introduce and speak about her company. Hello, Bozena. Buenos días.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Pedro. I'm just going to share my screen with you and take you through a presentation. This would take approximately 20 minutes, but hopefully by the end of it, you will understand everything about mortgages and the process and how to apply for a mortgage. So first of all, Mortgage Direct. Mortgage Direct was started in 2006 by Katherine Walkerdine and 𝐏𝐤𝐿𝐴. We are fully authorized and licensed by the Bank of Spain. There are 9 advisors within the company, and between our team, we speak 10 languages. A little bit about myself. I lived in UK for 25 years. I'm independent financial advisor. I'm also qualified mortgage broker in UK. I'm also accountant in UK, and 3 years ago I decided to move to Spain and become a mortgage broker in Spain. I'm now fully qualified with the Bank of Spain. In today's presentation, I'm going to cover the typical questions we get asked by our customers. So usually that's a type of mortgages, interest rates, deposits, criteria, and what's the process. So what type of mortgages are available in Spain? We have the normal residential mortgages, so that's if you're thinking of moving to Spain and buying your own residential mortgage property. We do the holiday mortgages on holiday homes. So if you're planning to buy a property for yourself, but then rent it out when you are not using the property. We do the commercial lending. We do mortgages on new build property. We do construction mortgages, also short-term bridging finance for companies. That's quite specialized lending. Minimum loan amount is 500,000. So how much deposit do you need to put down? And this recently changed. It changed back in 2019 when Bank of Spain regulated the mortgage market. So the basic criteria is if your income is in euros, the deposit you need to put down is 30%. If your income is not in euros, you are required to put down 40% deposit unless the mortgage is over 100,000. And this is exception to the rule. There is still one bank remaining in Spain that will offer mortgages at 70%, regardless whether your income is in euro or any other currency. For the commercial lending, usually the deposit that you need to put down is between 40 to 50%. And usually there is a minimum term on those mortgages up to 15 years. So how much you can borrow? This slide and the next slide perhaps is the most important to understand the criteria. The amount that you are able to borrow in Spain depends on your debt to income ratio. As a general rule, the banks in Spain will allow 1/3 of your net monthly salary to cover your current financial commitments plus the new Spanish mortgage. The exact percentage varies between the banks. Some banks use 30% debt to income ratio, some banks use 40%, but most of them use 30%. I'm just going to demonstrate this, how it works by example.
That's an example, okay, that's perfect.
So we have Mr. and Mrs. Smith looking to borrow 100,000 over 20 years. And the mortgage repayments on this mortgage repayments will be about 510 euros per month. The joint net income is 3,000 per month, and the existing borrowings is the mortgage of 390 and a car loan of 120 per month. So we're comparing here two banks. Bank A offers debt to income ratio at 30%, and Bank B offers debt to income ratio at 40%. So if we look at the calculations, so we've got Bank A, 3,000 times 30% debt to income ratio, that is disposable income, 900. Out of this, we need to deduct the current commitment. So we've got 390, the existing mortgage, 120 is the car loan, and 510 is the new Spanish mortgage. As you can see, the figure is negative, minus 120, which means Bank A will decline the application. If we look, however, at Bank B, you will see that on Bank B, we've got 40% debt to income ratio. So it's 3,000 times 40, the disposable income of 1,200. Then we deduct the current commitment. So it's minus the mortgage, minus the car, minus the Spanish mortgage. And we still end up with positive figure of 180. So the Mr. and Mrs. Smith met the criteria for this bank, and the application will be approved. What interest rates are currently available? The interest rates I'm using here are the average interest rates, and they usually depend on your debt to income ratio and also how much deposit you're going to put down. The lower the risk to the bank, the better interest rate you can get. But on average, we're looking at variable rates, Euribor plus 1.25. Those rates are, of course, not guarantees. The variable rate can go up and can go down. We're looking at fixed rates. We can get the fixed rates for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. And as an example, 10 years, 1.95, 25 years, 2.25. Worth mentioning also that due to the volume of the business we submit to the bank, we get preferential interest rates and preferential terms and conditions of the mortgage. What type of income is acceptable by the banks? So, of course, the employment income, those are the favorite candidates because it's the secured and safe lending. So it's the salary, it's the bonuses, commission, and any other benefits you get from your employer. For the self-employed, is the salary, dividends. You might also have a rental income. So basically anything that is showing on your personal tax return. Pension income is also accepted. What is not acceptable is the child maintenance and social security benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So how you can prove your income, I mean, there are quite a few documents to collect, but the main one to prove your income. If you're employed, we're looking at your annual tax statements. So in UK, it's P60 or equivalent, pay slips and a work contracts. Usually the banks wants to see the last 2 years. For the self-employed people, it's the tax returns. For owners of limited companies, we have the annual accounts and also tax returns. For the rental income, on top of the tax returns, they want to see tenancy agreements, rental contracts, and the proof of rent received in the bank account. For the pension income, again, it's the tax returns, annual pension statements, and of course, we need to provide bank statements to the bank to demonstrate that the income has been paid into a bank account. So buying process, I'm sure Pedro is going to cover this in more details, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. Once you find the property and your offer is accepted, you will be required to pay a reservation deposit, which is usually, depending on the agents, it's between 3,000 to 6,000. Within a short period of time that is usually agreed with the agent and your solicitor, you will be required to pay 10% deposit. All of those deposits are non-refundable. They are not subject, this is very important, and we come across this all the time. Neither of those deposits are subject of you obtaining the finance or satisfactory valuation. So if the mortgage is not pre-approved, if the valuation is not carried out, or at least the value checked, you are at the risk of losing your deposit.
That is really important, Bozena. Let me just interrupt. That is really important, and by now Ignacio will be speaking about that. Those situations that may happen when people do not get a mortgage but has already paid 10%. These risks that you're saying, I think is really important, and we will mention that on the legal aspects.
Sure. So how we can help in the process? Before recommending any of the banks, we start by calculating your current debt to income ratio. Once we know your debt to income ratio, we know which bank we can approach. We can provide you with the quotes, all the terms and conditions, the interest rates, the terms, and we can apply for the mortgage pre-approval. So you can have the mortgage approved prior to you visiting the Spain. And that gives you the peace of mind that if you do find the property, you can then sign the reservation contract and the purchase contract, because you know you have a mortgage. Once your mortgage is pre-approved, we open a bank account. With some banks, we can just open the bank account remotely. With some banks, we can prepare the account to be open and the solicitor can sign it with the power of attorney. We can also check the value of the property. So before you make any offers, before you sign any contract, I can check the value, how the property will be valued with the surveying company, and that we will learn in advance if the property is downvalued. You can then make a decision whether you want to proceed or whether you want to withdraw from the purchase. We on top of everything else, we also oversee the whole process from the day one when you contact us to completion day. We look after you. So we get all the pre-approval, everything open and ready. We then correspond with the solicitor, with the banks, with the agents, and keep everybody updated. So what do we charge? We have administration fee. So this is where you decide, once you get a quote from us, once we know we can get you a mortgage, and you want to pre-approve your mortgage, we charge €695. This fee is covered under money back guarantee, which means that if the bank rejects the application, if I've made a mistake somewhere in the calculation, the fee is fully refunded. Once the mortgage is approved based on your financial situation, we charge €1,000 or 0.6% of the mortgage amount, whichever is the highest. Worth mentioning here, if we don't charge for multiple applications, which means if you find the property and there are some legal issues with the property and you decide not to proceed, and let's say in 2022, you want to restart the process and start looking for properties again, we get the mortgage pre-approved again at no extra charge. Our charges are per completed purchase and not number of applications. So cost of buying in Spain, I'm sure Pedro will cover that, but on average we say it's between 9 to 13%, depending on the region of Spain. Property taxes between 6 to 10%. Again, depending on the region. You then have the notary registry, about €1,000. Part of that cost the banks cover for you. We've got banks arrangement fees between 0 to 1.5%. That very much depends on the bank, which bank we decide to go for. You then have the valuation. Valuation depends on the size and the price of the property. You then have a solicitor's fees and mortgage broker fees. Worth mentioning, I wanted to mention this, and I just put it towards the end of the presentation. It's very important where the deposit is coming from for the purchase. If the deposit for the purchase in Spain is coming from remortgage or refinancing your existing properties, there is a good chance the mortgage will be declined. The banks in Spain really don't like if somebody is borrowing additional money to purchase in Spain. Part of the pre-approval, they look into ability to save. And if your deposit is coming from additional borrowings, the chances are, excuse me, the application will be rejected. So please consult the mortgage broker before you start the process. So that's everything from me. So in summary, before you start the journey, check whether you will qualify for the mortgage, get the mortgage pre-approved, check the value of the property, because if the property is devalued, the bank will only lend you the percentage of either the purchase price or the valuation, whichever is the lowest. And please do not sign any contract until you're certain you have the finance and your solicitor check the legality of the property. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Bozena. I think it's been very interesting. And I think you have brought some bullet points and some good recommendations on when applying a mortgage. I have just read in the latest slide, yes, don't sign anything until, well, you already checked out the legal aspects of the property are checked. And for that reason, we are gonna speak of course, about the process that you have already introduced about buying a process in Spain, a summary of, I mean, some bullet points about the legal aspects on buying a property in Spain, and also what are the phases of the mortgage, and whenever it's signed, what information you should receive, and what happens at the notary office when you sign the purchase deed and the mortgage deed. Let's, before see the video of buying a property in Spain from Pellicer Heredia, and then I will introduce Ignacio.
Buying a property in Spain. There are many reasons to purchase a property in Spain. The climate, the food, the culture, or simply to enjoy life. If you already see yourself buying the house of your dreams in the Mediterranean, it is important to be cautious and follow a series of steps. First, prepare a budget and take into account all the possible expenses. Remember to add transfer tax or VAT to the sale price, as well as legal fees, notary fees, and land registry fees. And even if it was love at first sight, do not rush or sign anything. The most important thing, especially if you're not yet a Spanish resident, is to hire an independent lawyer, a specialist who speaks your language and solely defends your interests. Together, you can review the characteristics of the house. Should it have pending charges, negotiate a mortgage with the banks, and you will always be up to date throughout the whole process. But most importantly, fall in love with your property and do things by the book. Your new life starts there. Pellicer and Heredia, international lawyers.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we have a special guest, as always, experienced and expert lawyer and barrister for the last 20 years, Ignacio Pellicer. He is a partner of Pellicer and Heredia, and of course, I would like to introduce you this aspect in order to speak about buying a property in Spain, and also what kind of circumstances, what are the phases in order to apply for a mortgage. Good morning, Ignacio.
Hi, Pedro. Good morning. Hello, Bozena.
Hello. Good morning.
So, Ignacio, let's give some summary, a briefly summary about which are the phases on buying a property in Spain. I know it could be too long, but also we could give some phases in order to, what recommendation would you do in order to buy a property in Spain?
Right. Okay, Pedro. I'll try to be quick and brief and straight to the point, because buying a property in Spain, I always say, Pedro, is safe, but you need to do things properly and buy the book. When you first find the property of your dreams, or the property that suits you at the stage where you decide to come over to Spain, then the first thing I always recommend, it will be to appoint an independent lawyer who will look after your interest. It is very important, that decision, because that could make a lot of changes. I'm a bit insistent saying all the time, the situation we end up having when they didn't do things by the book is a waste of time, stress for clients, and probably is very hard to put things right in a late stage. I will tell you a little bit of a story that we had this week about how bad and unlucky these clients were not having a lawyer when they bought property. Now, being straight to the point, they will find the right property. They will approach a estate agent, and I'm very positive either the vendor or the estate agent will like a deposit. At that stage, I will always recommend not to rush. I'm never keen on rushes, and it's important for them to have a representative in Spain. As Bozena said, if you already did your homework and you already spoke to a bank and you already have a mortgage in place, even better. But if you don't, it will be the right time probably to open a bank account in Spain and probably to make the application on the mortgage. For those who are watching who are abroad, I will always recommend you to have documents in place if you want to speed up things. it is important that, because opening a bank account, doing the valuation and going through the conveyancing, it takes time. So the more you could do before, the better. Now, once your solicitor is being appointed and does all the due diligence, whether the property is inland, whether the property is urban land, or any type of property, will have to have an inspection. I highly recommend to have a survey, especially, but not only the bank survey, which is a valuation. I will always recommend, if we're talking about rustic land, to be very specific on certain things, because banks will not very much be concerned on certain things that are very private. For example, if the boundary is 10,000 square meters and is 9,000 euros, you probably will get the bank to give you a mortgage, but you really need to make sure what you're buying is exactly what is being shown to you and what is in the contract. Now, contracts, as Bozena said, normally you'll pay a deposit, 3,000 euros normal practice, and then you'll pay another 10%. I must say that contracts sometimes could be agreed between parties. So even though in the presentation is very important, the notice that you did mention about is not linked to the finance, I agree, and we've done it in different occasions, that is part of the terms and conditions of the contract. So if the vendor agrees and the buyer agrees, could even say, I pay you this deposit, but in case I don't get a mortgage, then I will have it back. Sometimes we hold the reservation in our client account, and sometimes even the vendor solicitor or even the agent. So there is flexibility on the, but I agree, you must in the contract.
But that needs to be agreed by the vendor, and of course, obviously, many times they don't accept that. But of course, I understand what you say. It's been introduced. Some purchasers may introduce this clause in order, well, to
Pedro,
get this right back here.
You know, Pedro, we have included in our contract because at the end of the day, market is buying and selling. Whatever you both parties agree is acceptable. If you have your own funds, the vendor's happy and you are happy, you could just link it. It's like rent to buy property. We're having a rent to buy property more and more nowadays because of the COVID situation. And again, it's always an option. So going back to where we were on buying a property, you probably paid 3,000. Your solicitor already started doing the due diligence. I always recommend the solicitor to start to do the due diligence before even paying a deposit. Okay, sometimes that's possible. Sometimes that property have too many buyers or potential buyers, and you don't want to take it at risk. But I recommend you to have a reservation saying yourself, you pay that money and the conditions that everything will be according to law and legal. Okay, the reason why is because there is so many properties in the market, and a lot of vendors didn't update it, or they're not using a solicitor or whatever. So it's very important for you to be safe. Now, then we go to the 10%. If it's a resale, it's 10%. That's a normal practice. Some people might ask more, 20 or 30 or whatever. It depends on parties again. If we're talking about off-plan property, Pedro, we could have stage payments, always guaranteed by the bank. And here I just stop to say, you must have a bank guarantee of your money. I mean, there is no way I recommend you to buy a property without bank guarantee, which protects your interest in case of failure, contract, or bankruptcy from the vendor. Correct, Pedro?
Yeah, I think it's a must. It's a must to have a bank guarantee. Could you explain us how that works in case extreme scenario that, for example, a developer entering in a bankruptcy, for example?
Right. So basically, you'll pay a deposit, but your solicitor, when he starts doing the due diligence, he will identify the kind of contract the developer is trying. Because normally, just bear in mind, Pedro, this is always off plan and the first time, and while the property is being pretty much built. Okay, it could be 20%, or it could be even 80% or 50%. So it depends on how much progress. But it's important because the aim of the applicable law is to protect the buyer in case of failure. So thanks to that law, we managed, Pedro, to get a lot of people's money back from the past credit crunch, which was in 2007, as everybody, and 8, as a lot of people is aware, and a lot of companies went into liquidation. Now, this really helps that protection. Nowadays, there is still a lot of doctrine to say that the bank is responsible of that money. Now, Pedro, you were interested to say how it works, the off-plan bank guarantee. That's very straightforward. You've got a contract with the vendor and the buyer. The contract should say something about bank guarantees, but sometimes you might end up, your solicitor will end up finding that there is even mentioned, and it's compulsory, as simple as that. So my recommendation would be not to pay money without that guarantee, and even have a letter of the bank that they're using saying that any money is guaranteed by them. I know it's hard to get the guarantee on time, and sometimes you need to be very cautious about, do I give the banker's draft and the check, and do you give me the bank guarantee? I always try to be very protective, okay? But if you have a letter from a bank saying that that developer has a special client account and the money that you invest here will be guaranteed, then I will be happy to wait, pay the money and wait for the bank to get me the guarantee. But again, I think it's important to do this and be strict. Okay, you can save a lot of problems, and there is no need, for example, like this situation with the COVID, Pedro. Now, some people might end up having problems or difficulties, you know? What happens with those buyers who didn't have that? So it's important for them to start, if they didn't do it, trying to find out more about that. So even if it's a resale, Pedro, or an off-plan property purchase, we've got the guarantee, you pay the 310%, and then you're ready to completion. Normally, in the meanwhile, you would have contacted a bank, or you would have already, as Bozena said, applied while you were abroad. Therefore, you might have an idea on when you'll be able to have the full amount of money, the mortgage, okay? Now, in Spain here, roughly the granting is 70%, and then you end up going to evaluation. It will depend whether you're resident, you're non-resident, all these commissions, opening commission, etc., as Bozena explained, and they will send you a surveyor at home. But this is normally, I mean, I've been seeing, Pedro, more and more professional reports now. But I always say that report normally is for the bank. There is a lot of extra reports you could get. You might be satisfied to have the amount of money that the bank requires, so it might be good enough. But as I said, Pedro, in the inland areas, sometimes you have 9,000 square meters and you've got 20. You're going to get a mortgage anyway, but it's important to have survey report.
So let me ask you one thing, Ignacio, to stop on this phase. As I think Bozena already said that in the meanwhile, whenever you are going to sign the contract, whenever you're going to make like a let's say 10% amount, 10% of a deposit, or it's important to know if you're going to get a mortgage or pre-approved mortgage, because once you pay that 10% in accordingly to the contract, what happens if, imagine that someone has no prevent about the low mortgage and understands that it's going to get a positive answer by a bank and then is rejected and has already paid 10%, has a contract, a binding contract, and will not be able to complete because a bank has rejected the mortgage. What happens on these situations on a standard? Yeah. Right.
Okay, Pedro. So in case you didn't mention in the contract that you will be you will have a refund of your money, okay? That means that probably you don't end up having the money, and there is an article according to Civil Code which basically says, which again, Pedro, you could agree on something different. If both parties agree saying, if I don't complete at the time, I'm able to have a refund. Great deal. I know it's not the common circumstances, it's not ideal, but there is a lot of vendors that are looking for buyers and they are being flexible, you know, and it depends on demand. Now, if nothing is said and there is an article which says if you don't meet the requirements to complete on this day with the money, you lose your deposit. This is normal practice, okay? But again, you, Pedro, and myself have seen many contracts, and everything could be discussed and agreed. So once you already paid that deposit, the bank give you the approval. Then I don't know, Pedro, if you want to explain what the stage about going to the notary to agree on the terms and conditions of the mortgage.
Yeah. I mean, once the contract, the private contract with the vendor has already signed, before completion, of course, there is some specific step that needs to be done with the bank. I assume with the bank needs to be informed by the notary about the conditions, needs to have to check the fine binding offer. And there's a document named FEIN, which could you explain us a little bit about this phase between the private contract and the completion?
Right. You basically will speak to the bank about the terms and condition of the mortgage. You will sign everything in front of with the bank, and that basically, Pedro, means all the conditions, the ins and outs of your mortgage. All the letter, even though it's small letter, will be mentioned there, right? You need to understand that the whole documents, so they give you example, what is best situation, or situation, what are the commissions, what are the conditions for you to have certain bonus or reductions on your rates. So that's where they offer you all this information, which will end up being binding if you accept it. Then this is being sent to the notary, and you will go at a specific time with an appointment to sign the fine, okay? Once you agree on that, you could, in later stage, you know, I don't want to get into specific dates, but they will tell you exactly what day you'll be able to end up having the mortgage signed, because you've been prior being informed by your lawyer, which normally we go at the notary to explain what the conditions are on writing, and the notary explains to the client the conditions. Then you'll be given a further day of appointment, so that the mortgage bank will give you the money, and that day you and your lawyer could go and pick up the check, or even the bank will bring the check of the money they're giving you, and if there is any extra money put on it, you need to bring the other check as well from your own money. With regards to the cost, I agree with Bozena. In Costa Blanca, the average will be about 13% on top of the purchase on a resale property, and the bank will cover pretty much all these notary fees, register fees, situation. Okay, but again, is part of the conditions where you will sit down and discuss terms and conditions. And then you will sign, purchase a property, get your mortgage, and on that day, you will be officially the owner of your new house. That will take some time to pay the transfer tax and register the land registry. And but as I said, buying property in Spain is safe, but it's very important to do things properly, Pedro, by the book and with guarantees.
Thank you, Ignacio. One more question about, I mean, this process. You all have already said that in the information that is given by a notary, or at the end, I mean, you can act in behalf of a client with a power of attorney. Is that right?
That's right. That's
how does it? Can you explain us how does it work? Power of attorney, just to.
Well, that's a good point, Pedro. Buying a property in Spain with power of attorney is no problem. You can still grant power of attorney to your lawyer from abroad. We normally do it through public notaries outside Spain or even at the Spanish embassy. So that's one option. Then for the signing, the lawyer could sign the fine and could sign and go to the notary and could go on complete. So this is something as lawyers, we normally do for clients as we do the conveyancing as well for them. Okay. Yes, Pedro, the power of attorney substitutes the person who's having the mortgage. And what we normally do, we try to report everything to the client and we just do the signing as long as they fully understand.
Okay, well, thank you, Ignacio. Thank you for this good explanation about buying a property in Spain, the process, and of course, introducing the mortgage during that process, which is extremely important. I have some questions, Bozena. Let's see if we can discuss, all of us, regarding mortgages and banks in Spain, especially whenever they give a mortgage. Of course, they offer different kind of services. And now I'm speaking about insurance of the house, insurance of life insurance. And some banks, I assume that not, in our experience, are not doing things correctly, but some other ones are doing correctly. Bozena, could you give us like your experience with the Spanish banks regarding insurance?
Sure. Yes, Spanish banks and a lot of the banks offer cheaper rates in exchange for taking with them additional products. This could be anything that varies from bank to bank. So it could be life cover, could be life cover home insurance, could be house alarm, could mean investing in money into the pension funds, all sorts of additional products. And to start with, this rate looks very attractive. And you think, oh, wow, I'm getting 1.2% fixed rate for 20 years. But when you look at the total cost of the mortgage, the monthly repayments that you have to pay for the mortgage, for the life cover, for the home insurance, for the house alarm, for everything added together, it becomes drastically expensive. So you might as well get the interest rate at 4% and it's still going to be cheaper.
Exactly.
So in our search for the correct bank, we always, we start with your debt to income ratio, and then we try to avoid the banks that insist on too many products. It's not ethical, it's incorrect, and this is how, unfortunately, banks are making money, by adding those products. We try to avoid them. Sometimes we don't have a choice, but we tell you in advance, we've got no choice. We have to go with bank D, and we need to take home insurance, life cover. This is how much it's going to cost you. There is no other bank that will approve the application. But as a general rule, I'm a strong believer in getting a life cover, but it's much cheaper to get a life cover outside the bank. Banks, unfortunately, make this for them. They make money on life covers, and although they give you cheap rates, but the overall cost is not cheap.
Okay, well, thank you, Bozena. I don't know if Ignacio, you would like to add anything about this?
Yes, I fully agree with Bozena, and exercise for you to always work out with figures, how much is costing you, because sometimes you're in a position where we've got this mortgage, we want that house, and this is like dish that we're having for lunch, you know, and we're saying, okay, as I discussed with the notary the other day, what we need to do is calculations. How much is a very good life insurance company policy? How much is with the bank? And how much is the bonus they're giving you? Okay, so this is the exercise that the more and more our clients and consumers are doing. And I'm very happy to do this exercise, because even though you've got the requirements, sometimes it's cheaper, and it's good practice, and it's good for your money. So I agree with Bozena what she said. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ignacio. And another thing that I would like to raise is just is regarding the language, Bozena. I'm sure that, I mean, for us in our experience, Ignacio and myself, even though we've been trying to recommend one bank or the other one, it's not easy, because the language and the communication and the explanation to be accurate, we've been very struggle on that. And I assume that communication in your language is with the client, and inform them correctly about the conditions and terms and how does it work, this mortgage, is crucial. I think it's a spectacular value that is being informed, not just with a good English, is that with a good understanding of how it works alone in Spain. What do you think? I mean, have you brought this into your clients, Bozena?
Of course, part of my assessment, I always ask client, how good is your Spanish? And uno vino tinto por favor is not good enough to communicate with Spanish banks. But we work with all the banks, and with each bank, we have a group of people that we know they speak English or Dutch or German or French. So once we get the mortgage pre-approved, once you get the bank account open, we introduce you to the English-speaking manager, and that manager is not only looking after your mortgage application, but it will become your manager for the life of the mortgage, for as long as you have bank account. So if you have a problem in the future with your bank account, you just email them and they will deal with it. But it's very true that unfortunately in Spanish banks, there are not enough people that speaks the language. And although the understanding, you know, when you walk in and ask them about the mortgage and everything, it might be good. But when it comes to checking the documents, the financial statements, the tax returns, sometimes the knowledge is so limited that you can end up with mortgage being declined, because it's lack of understanding of documents, which can result in a declined application. But we always recommend English. We always work with branches. English, the English have to be perfect. That's our recommendation.
Exactly. I agree with you. I fully agree with you. But I don't know if Ignacio would like to add something about your experience on this.
What do you mean, Pedro? Experience on mortgages or...
Well, on mortgages, I mean, we're talking about on banks, of course, as I said, and at the end is a limitation of the language and the understanding of explaining to clients in a accurate way. I mean, from banks to clients, we've been struggling on that. I mean, it's so this is important to choose the correct bank and to choose the correct manager, which is going to be perfect in order to communicate perfectly what is going to be deal. And also, as I said, there's the life of the mortgage. At the end, you just are going to go open a bank account, and you will have that relation with the bank.
As I said, Pedro, my first advice will be not only do things by the book, but in advance. Doing things in a rush are not good, and sometimes you end up paying more of what you should. I think clients are more prepared nowadays than in the old days on searching, probably internet, shopping around and looking for a good deal. As long as you have the paperwork in order and you are solvent to convince the bank that you're going to carry on paying, because at the end of the day, as Bozena said, depending on the risk that you are at the bank will give you a higher or a lower rate. So the key here is for you to prove that you have the funds or the income, which is the main concern the bank has. And then after that, through your solicitor, he could explain to you the ins and outs of the mortgage. At the end of the day, you need how to understand how the mortgage procedure works, and failing to pay, how is the procedure that is going to happen? Basically, is a repossession property, and then that will be on the title deed of your mortgage. It will specify what is the value of the property, the option value, the cost, etc., etc. So all that is going to be explained on the title. It is important to have a lawyer, as Bozena says, who speaks your language, and to explain exactly what are all the ins and outs of that. Now, after you're aware of all this situation, Pedro, I think no confusion should arise if it's been properly explained, Pedro.
Okay,
I just wanted to add on this point, if I may, about it's important to get a solicitor. Some of the clients ask me, do I need a solicitor to buy in Spain? Well, yes. And we discuss the reasons why, but one of the reasons, although you will be introduced to English-speaking bank manager, most of the documents that the bank system generates are in Spanish. So with regards to mortgage, I can help you to translate and understand, but anything else, that will be your solicitor who speaks Spanish, who can then translate those documents and talk you through the legality. So it's important.
It is important. Thank you, Bozena. I think we are running out of time. Well, it's been amazing, Bozena, that you have explained and introduced your company. I think you are a great value on advising clients in order to get the best mortgage, but also to get a best understanding and knowledge about what they are going to sign, of course, in their language, in English. And of course, we recommend your company to potential clients that may want to buy a property in Spain. Would you like to say something just to finalize before we introduce another video?
I just want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact us. You can always email me or contact Pedro. He will forward the details. I can do the calculations. I can help you. So please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bozena, and thank you, Ignacio, also for your explanation about the process of buying a property in Spain. I know that both of you will take a lot of hours speaking about mortgages and buying a property, but we are limited of time, really. And well, Ignacio, thank you very much for your explanation. Would you like to say something just to finalize, please?
Well, no, just thank you very much to Bozena to explain the whole process. I thought it was very, very interesting and good, and a lot of information for customers. In the past, people didn't have so much information, so that's why I really appreciate that. Nowadays, even having a mortgage is very safe and transparent. So that's good on that. Now, with regards to buying a property in Spain, I still insist, always choose an independent lawyer who will only look for your interest. As Bozena said, the bank will look after themselves, the agents themselves, etc. The lawyer will look after yourself. And then you will have to make decisions. And investing and buying a property in Spain is some of your money, and you need to be well protected. So Pedro and Bozena, thank you, and we'll see you in next webinar.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you, and thank you everyone which is watching us, and we hope it was interesting, the information is being given in this webinar, and we will see you next week with another topics. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and have a nice weekend.
Maybe because I was born on the Mediterranean, I feel so connected to this sea, to this land, to this light. Because the Costa Blanca is my passion, it's my life, it's who I am. It defines me as a person and sets me apart from the rest. Yes, it's important not to forget who we are and where we come from. That helps us understand the meaning of our lives. By this sea I was born and grew up, laughed and cried too, the emotions of life. Our land is health and well-being, the joy of living, in our own way, in our own style, authentic. That's why so many artists come to the Costa Blanca looking for inspiration, to capture the essence, that light that defines our character. And not just artists. So many people come here and stay. The sky, the landscape, the rosy sunsets, the warm sand under your feet, the sea breeze on your skin, the mountains, and seeing the sea from the heights. I love to close my eyes, take a deep breath, and feel the sun on my eyelids. As if the light was inside me. I can't explain it. As my grandmother used to say, life is full of inexplicable things. You have to live them, feel them. I had to live in other parts of the world to really value what we have here. I have everything I need. My future is here. I've learned to enjoy the little things, the little pleasures in life. And we know a lot about those. There's nothing more authentic than feeling happy in the place where you were born. And however hard I try, I can't explain it in words. Costa Blanca, authentically ours.